We never know where life will lead us or what may hinder us along the way. But while every day can feel like one big question mark, it doesn't have to. With the right insights, strategies, and solutions from Western and Southern Financial Group, together we can look ahead to leave the unknown behind.
Back in studio for the third time this week, Mike. We're doing 3 episodes a week now. We have a Thursday episode, a Wednesday episode, and a Monday episode. On the Thursday episode, we do a mailbag. But before we get into the mailbag, we got to talk about Todd McShay's latest mock draft. I think it came out like 30 minutes ago. Shout out to David Solfaro, who works on the side with us as, doing timestamps and preparing us for this podcast. He noted it like, hey, he's got some wild picks in here. Let's start. We're not going to read off every single pick.
Our boy, Todd McShay.
Our boy, Todd McShay. You've had the story with Todd McShay. You saw him playing beer pong at a bar or something like that.
Oh, yeah, you weren't there.
I wasn't there. I had to leave early. I was on the outside.
I went up, introduced myself, and he was nice.
It was at the Senior Bowl last year.
Yeah.
And you called him out saying, why do you have Josh Jones so low?
I was just like, hey, what do you think about Josh Jones? And he's like, are we really going to do this right now? It's like,
man.
Yeah, no, that's all right.
Oh, man. Don't be rude to Todd McShay.
I wasn't rude.
Don't be rude to Todd McShay. Regardless, let's look at this draft. We're not going to read off every single pick, but some of the notables, after Trevor Lawrence goes 1, his Penei Sewell going to the New York Jets at 2, and the new coaching staff and them building around Sam Darnold. This is something that we've been avidly against. I can't, and I'm not knocking Todd McShay for ranking Sewell that high, but I think it's wild to think that there is a conversation right now in the New York Jets front office for Joe Douglas to build around Sam Darnold and not take a quarterback here.
Yeah, I think Josh Allen and his career arc is going to screw a lot of teams. Because everyone's going to say,
you're right.
Look at Josh Allen. Look at what happened with him. Turned into an MVP. He has all these tools. Just need to get the pieces around him. There's the Mitch Trubisky's of the world. The failed those guys are far more frequent than the Josh Allens. The Josh Allen's the outlier. And the biggest thing here with me about passing on a quarterback, if you're the Jets, say Sam Darnold lights the world on fire. Say he's great this upcoming season. Everything you could have hoped for. You pay him then $40 million a year the next year. You're paying for it immediately. You have like that.
Well, they could do the
whole
5th-year option
benefit, but the 5th-year option now is a lot after the new CBA, especially at the quarterback position, is basically it puts your salary in line with.
Oh wow, really? I didn't know that.
So especially for the number, what was he? The number 2 overall pick that year? No, he's number 3 overall pick. Saquon Barkley's number 2. Sorry, but so there really doesn't save you any money. The benefit of that drafting a quarterback highly, hitting on that and having them on the rookie deal, like the Bills have now with Josh Allen, is all of a sudden gone. You turn into the Texans then in terms of what you can do with your cap space. So that just, to me, would be idiotic to go anywhere other than quarterback, especially in this class.
I like to think about this situation in like ideal situation. So if they take Penei Sewell and he is Tristan Wirfs' level of impact, like the best offensive tackle, rookie offensive tackle in the NFL, top 5 at his position, regardless of experience. And Sam Darnold takes a Josh Allen-like leap. How many wins does the Jets have next year? 8?
Yeah, 8, 9, something like that.
And that's the worst situation you could be in. And now you're in purgatory, having to potentially pay Sam Darnold $40 million a year. And yes, you have Penei Sewell, who's in this situation, ideally, Tristan Wirfs' level of impact. And Sam Darnold has improved. But now you're going to have to make that decision to pay him a ton of money in this purgatory situation where you're not going to be able to make an upgrade at the quarterback position like you can now. I just don't see why this would be in the cards. Like your perfect situation, your ideal situation is finishing 2nd in the AFC East, potentially making a 7th spot wild card or missing the playoffs and then missing out on next year's quarterback class. Also, we haven't brought this up enough. Next year's quarterback class is not as good as this one, at least right now. After Spencer Rattler,
there's talent. I mean, I'm just saying there is talent. You don't like to speak too far out about a quarterback class because you never know. And I don't think that should factor into your decision making one way or the other because of the uncertainty that can happen over the course of a year. But I will say this quarterback class is different. This doesn't come around every year.
Yes.
Like that has to be recognized, that a guy like Zach Wilson, Justin Fields aren't just there every single year with a number 2 overall pick.
It's an interesting situation. I hope the Jets don't go that way. For Jets fans, I think they'd be better off taking a rookie quarterback. But
if you had the high opinion of Sam Darnold, if you really think he's going to be that good and just needs pieces around him, you trade him. You trade him for like someone else will share that opinion and want to take a chance on him.
Or at the least trade back, because taking Penei Sewell at 2 is just absolutely absurd. All right, Devontae Smith is the next pick in Todd McShay's mock at 3 overall, first receiver off the board. And I said this on the Wednesday episode, you can't be overconfident in your evaluation. Devontae Smith may be the most productive receiver in this class, better than Jamar Chase in the future. But I would say that at 3 overall, when Calvin Johnson went 2 overall after Jamarcus Russell in 2007, 3 overall, Devontae Smith is I feel like a scary decision to make, because it wouldn't be a completely data-driven decision using athleticism and body comps and looking at historical success by receivers at his size. In addition to that, you could evaluate him and his route running and how he gets off the line of scrimmage, all that stuff, ball skills, and say, man, he is the best receiver in this class. But to take him at 3 with other quarterbacks on the board, I still feel like it's too rich in my opinion.
Yeah, and it eschews the whole concept. I guess in this mock, Penei Sewell goes too. But to me, it eschews the concept of positional scarcity, where you have another pick in the first round here, the Miami Dolphins, at 18 overall. There's going to be a damn good wide receiver at 18 overall. There's going to be a guy who could be a number 1 wide receiver on your team at 18
Arguably
overall.
one who could be more productive than Devontae Smith, because of the up and down of
exactly. Like depending on the situation he goes to. Like the difference between Devontae Smith and the guy you can find at 18 overall is going to be vastly different than other positions in this draft class.
All right, further down the road, he has Zach Wilson going to the Atlanta Falcons, and then Rashawn Slater going to the Cincinnati Bengals. Penei Sewell already off the board. They have to address offensive line. And I think we haven't talked about this enough, but is the gap between Sewell and the next best offensive tackle, whether it's Slater, Cosme, Darisaw, is it 2 picks? Is it something where the Bengals should consider at 5? From our draft board's perspective, no. But do you feel like it's starting to make more sense for the Bengals to do that and force need here with already the blue chip offensive tackle off the board in Penei Sewell?
It's a very deep offensive tackle class. I would say, granted, everyone declares and it ends up going. There's going to be a lot of talent in this tackle class. And I think the Bengals could even find one in the top of the second round. Not obviously something you recommend every single year to wait on the tackle class, but I do think that's how much talent there is. This is a very solid tackle class. I just think I do like Rashawn Slater a lot. I've come around on him wholesale. I do think he is a first round type of talent. But number 5, I don't know. I think if you're at number 5, exploring trade backs there, if that's who you're going to take, is probably a better course of action, in my opinion. And it does seem like it's the Bengals. It does seem like they're probably going to pigeonhole themselves into an offensive line.
Yeah, and honestly, you have to take a step back too, and this is more of what Todd McShay is forecasting. He does mock drafts in the opinion of what I think they will do.
Yeah.
And we do mock drafts where what we would do, and that's how they usually come out vastly different. He's thinking about what Mike Brown will do, and I think he's not wrong there. Mike Brown will definitely consider an offensive tackle, but I want to bring up some of those names that you say it's a deep tackle class, guys that could fall to day 2 for the Cincinnati Bengals at the top there. Alex Leatherwood is one. Liam Eichenberg of Notre Dame. You have Tevin Jenkins of Oklahoma State. The big guy out of Minnesota, Daniel Falele.
I don't know if he declares because obviously he didn't play a lot this year. The Washington State offensive tackle, Abraham Lucas might declare as well.
Larry Borum too, the Missouri guy, graded really, really well this year.
Yeah, he's probably like a third rounder that could end up being a starter on a team. I do think this year, I was actually going through the numbers in the draft guide of offensive tackles that I included in our first iteration, which is only going to be, I believe, 150 players. And I was like, holy shit, I got 20 offensive tackles. That usually doesn't happen.
Yeah.
You usually don't have that many guys that you feel like. I was just going through and putting names in there, the guys I felt were worthy to be included in the first 150. 20 offensive tackles. I think that's how good this tackle class and how deep it is. It doesn't have the top tier talent like last year, but the depth is a lot better than years past for sure.
He then has Sean Wade going to the Los Angeles Chargers at 13.
Would not be falling.
Would not be falling. Sean Wade at 13 is rich. And I think former 5-star recruit, and he played at Ohio State. That is a lot of what is driving Shaun Wade's perception. I don't know if you read that piece by The Athletic. I think it was Bruce Feldman who wrote it. But it was about, he talked to a ton of Big Ten coaches about Ohio State and that defense, and multiple Big Ten coaches, not named, brought up Shaun Wade as a liability. He's no Jeffrey Okudah. That guy has really struggled this year. He needs more time. He could be a star, but he needs time. Like, Shaun Wade has been a legitimate liability for Ohio State this season playing outside. And even in the slot, he wasn't a world beater by any means. He had some good tape, but I didn't see him as a first-round slot player either. To have him at 13 overall feels aggressive. That feels aggressive to me. I think what that says, and I think what a lot of this says is Todd McShay knows the NFL is higher on some of these guys, like Slater, like Wade, another guy we'll bring up down the road here. But I do think Shaun Wade taking him that high inside the top 15 after what we've seen from him this year would be really, really scary, and I think a reach, in my opinion.
Yeah, in 7 games, he gave up over 100 yards 3 times this year, Shaun Wade.
And he's got another one coming. 6
touchdowns already. And yeah, he probably, it would be hard-pressed to see him blocking down after he couldn't handle Cornell Powell for Clemson.
Cornell Powell looks kind of good.
It's good, but probably
he's going to the Senior Bowl. I'm kind of excited for Cornell Powell.
But it's not Devontae Smith. I'll just say that. So I do think Shaun Wade at 13. I am curious to see how this cornerback class shakes out in terms of like public opinion, where guys fall, because there's a lot of bigger, longer cornerbacks in this class, but no real prototype guys. I'll say, like, no guys who have it all. I think Caleb Farley is probably the closest in terms of size, speed, length, all that. But there's a lot of different body types, which then means like it'll be scheme specific and what certain schemes are looking for. But I don't think there's a scheme where Shaun Wade is an ideal fit at this point on the outside, at least. To me, it's safety.
Yeah, box slot. I agree. This next pick is wild. Before we leave the Shaun Wade conversation, did you see that a reporter asked him who he wants to cover this week, and he says, "You know who?" And Devontae Smith. Does he want that smoke?
Jalen Waddle is who he wants to cover.
You think?
I hope. Well, I hope.
I don't care who I think it could be John Mechie. Okay, and he's going to have some struggles there. The Alabama receiving corps is different. Yeah. I think Nate Tice, who I encourage everyone to follow on Twitter. Nate Tice is a fantastic follow. I don't have his handle on hand, but just Twitter search Nate Tice.
Like Nate_Tice.
It might be Nate_Tice, but he brought up something
Mike
recently looking at their offense, and a lot of people have talked about Alabama's offense of late, and just showing like, because their receivers are so damn good, so fast, and can create separation so quickly, they can run things that other offenses can't run. Like that cross-country concept where you have a receiver going a long ways, and they're only running 5-man protections because they have good front off line, but also their receivers are getting to their points faster. This is a different breed here. Also, the RPO heavy stuff that Seth has brought up a ton is just wild.
Yeah.
I'm scared of that Alabama offense. I saw Benjamin Solak, too, also tweet out that they're an entire 0.1 EPA per play better than every college football offense. And that sounds like kind of too nerdy to really understand. Let's just say this. Their offense is absolutely absurd, and one of the best offenses in a single season I think we've ever seen in college football.
Yeah. And that's one of those things that I'm not sure you're ever going to be able to quantify in the how valuable is an offensive line versus wide receivers, pass rush versus coverage, is that when you know that you have receivers that run 4.3s and an offensive line that's going to give you time, you can draw up concepts like that. When you're a defense and you know that your 5-man blitz is going to get home, your cornerbacks can jump on routes with more confidence. Like, those are things that people know about football, but you can't quantify the confidence it gives a cornerback to jump a route. You can't necessarily, like, that's just something that's never really going to show up in any numbers, unfortunately.
He also has, this next pick we'll bring up, an absolute dream scenario for the New England Patriots, and that Justin Fields of Ohio State falls to them at 15.
I wonder if this is one of those, I'm not going to project any trades because that's stupid at this point. It kind of is. But I'm still going to give the guy to where I think he'll end up going, in the Patriots being like, the Patriots going to give up a lot of picks to go get Fields. But Fields falling to 15 would be insane to me. Dwayne Haskins fell to 15. And everyone's like, oh man, didn't really see that coming. Kind of a surprise, even though like no one was super high on Dwayne Haskins. No one's like, this guy is number one, except for maybe Louis Riddick in that year. But I do think that like Justin Fields, every single person comparing him to Dwayne Haskins coming out is going to choose Justin Fields every day. Like, that type of talent doesn't fall to 15 in the draft.
I would be floored if Justin Fields falls outside the top 5, let alone all the way to 15 for the New England Patriots. Again, a dream scenario for Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots if that does happen. The next pick is Travis Etienne going to the Arizona Cardinals. And you've been high on Travis Etienne for more than 18 months now. And still, I have him, 40th or 45th on our board, somewhere in that range.
Yeah.
There are going to be running backs that go in the first round. I think Todd McShay brought it up that Najee Harris has shown that he's a first-round pick this year, in addition to Travis Etienne. Do you think both of these guys end up going in the first round?
Man, I don't even want to try to predict where running backs are going anymore. It's not our specialty here.
No, I agree.
I will say Etienne, of all the backs in this class, I think he brings something different that you won't find elsewhere in that game-breaking explosiveness, home run hitting ability that I don't think any other back in this class can replicate. Now that, Journey Brown was forced to retire. I think he was probably the closest, the Penn State running back, but had obviously the heart issue or whatever, forced to retire. After that, I don't think if you need that guy in your offense, I don't think you're going to find that elsewhere. Najee Harris, you can find a guy who has a similar sort of skill set to Najee Harris. Like Javonte Williams has similar skill sets to Najee Harris. If you're looking for a power back who could run between the tackles, like there are guys that have that Ramondre Stevenson from Oklahoma is like an enormous, like 240 pounds and is pretty explosive. Like you can find that elsewhere in the draft. Etienne, if someone does draft in the first round and has a plan to use them in a role that's going to take advantage of that, I'm not going to hate on it. There's no other back I can really see the same argument for. And
I think that's fair. I mean, we'd be dumb to say like no back's worthy of taking inside day 1 or day 2. And I think there's going to be I think Travis Etienne and Najee Harris are probably going to go in the first 40, 50 picks based on how the NFL still currently evaluates the running back position. And I think of those two backs, who I think you can get the most out of and still see the most value is probably Travis Etienne. What he's done as a receiver and the explosiveness and the home run hitting ability he does have. All right, going to Elijah Moore. Elijah Moore goes to the Chicago Bears, I think, at 20. He's the Ole Miss slot receiver that has been so productive this year. Only Devontae Smith has really outpaced him from a production standpoint. But looking beyond productivity, I mean, Elijah Moore, destined to play in the slot in the next level. He's 5'9", 90
he's
pounds.
5'9", 185. And he's like we talked about Justin Jefferson, who made a lot of that, him playing the slot last year. But he had like the physical skills of a guy who plays outside.
Yeah.
Like he's
like 6'2".
Yeah, he had the size. So like that, whatever. It's like Elijah Moore is going to be a slot at the next level. Like there's no maybe. I just don't think he's ever going to do that. So drafting him that highly when, a lot of that production was him just even more so than Justin Jefferson, was him just sitting wide open in the middle of defenses. I'd be floored. I think he's a good prospect, but man, first round is a tough sell for me.
Yeah, a lot of that production was schemed. And I think the key difference in comparing Elijah Moore and Justin Jefferson, two slot receivers that produce really, really well at the collegiate level, I think is tools. From a size and athleticism standpoint, I think Elijah Moore holds a candle to what Justin Jefferson can do on the inside and outside. And I think Elijah Moore can still be a productive slot receiver, but I think you can find similarly productive slot receivers later in the draft. I think you can. I think Elijah Moore's production, if you use him similar to how Ole Miss used him, can be replicated by another wide receiver in this class, especially because this wide receiver class, in addition to being top heavy, is also very deep. There is a handful of receivers that will go on day 2 that'll be exciting pieces for teams in the NFL. Last one here we'll bring up on Todd McShay's mock draft is Jalen Waddle going to Las Vegas Raiders at 17. Going Henry Ruggs and then Waddle.
That would be insane.
That would be nuts.
Al Davis might actually come back to life. Like that might be enough to get him.
Well, the Al Davis eternal flame burns bright in the black, what do they call that? The Death Star in Las Vegas. So maybe it's
that would be one of the fastest receiving cores of all time. It'd be fun. But yeah, I would love to see it. But that's just, I don't know if that's how you'd want to necessarily build a receiving core unless you're really just fucking heaving it downfield every play.
Could they make it work, you think? They've struggled to make Henry Ruggs work.
I think you could. That is not going to be a normal offense. You can't run normal drop back concepts in that offense, I don't think. Like you're not going to run a lot of slants with those two guys. But I do think Jalen Waddle is more capable than Henry Ruggs in that regard, though, coming out.
Man, that would be exciting stuff. All right, that's going to do it for the Todd McShay mock draft here. Let's take a quick break, and then we'll dive into our mailbag, answer your guys' questions here. First question comes from Nate_doggy_dog. And his question was, had De'Aaron King not tore his ACL and declared for this year's draft, would many teams consider drafting him as a quarterback? Does going back to Miami next year boost his odds to get drafted? Mike, I'll let you start. But before I do so, now that we're doing the mailbag, I'm going to say it again. If you want your questions answered on the Thursday episode of 2 for 1 Drafts, reply to the tweet on Twitter. You can even send Mike a DM if you'd like.
Yeah, I responded to you.
I'll take a DM too on IG or Twitter. The IG DMs are flooded with models. I'll have to sift through, but I'll find a way. On YouTube, you can do it in the comments on YouTube, or you could do it and leave a review on the podcast. If you leave a review on the podcast, I'll definitely answer your question. Other places, it's easy to miss.
Well, those would be the first ones we answer.
First ones we answer. I like that. I like that as well. All right, so let's answer this one, though. Had De'Aaron King not tore his ACL, would teams have considered drafting him as quarterback, and does going back help him get drafted?
I think he would have gotten drafted. Okay. I'm not sure he would have gotten drafted after the ACL, but I think he would have gotten drafted healthy. Yep. I think teams, there's a lot more offenses in the NFL today that use their quarterback as a running threat. That's become a lot more commonplace. And when you have a guy who's a starter who's like that, you would also like your backup to be that way, so that you don't have to, like Trace McSorley in the Ravens. So you don't have to change what you're doing. You got an athletic guy who can run your whole scheme. So I do think he would have gotten drafted. I don't know though if coming back really helps his stock. Like his arm's not going to get any stronger. I don't think he's going to get any more accurate at this point, like down the football field. I just think that kind of is who he is. Especially like with coaching you at a collegiate level, I don't think he's going to boost it. But I think coming back, proving you're healthy from an ACL injury, he'll get drafted next year then. So I do think after the injury, it was kind of a foregone conclusion. Do
you think De'Aaron King should consider a position switch to the next level? Do you think NFL teams will view him maybe as a slot receiver in the NFL?
I don't think you should. Because I think, like I said, he'll get drafted as a quarterback value, if you're even can prove that you're a competent backup in those systems, you're getting $5 million a year in your next contract. You can play for a lot longer than you could as a slot receiver.
Chase Daniel, big Chase Daniel money.
Like Greg Ward's getting not a lot of money at wide receiver.
Yeah.
And that's kind of your ideal. Like that's him to actually be making roster, playing wide receiver is.
But if he doesn't get drafted and he's on practice squads and getting looks as an undrafted free agent next year, I do think you have to consider it to stick around, right?
Yeah, at that point. Oh yeah, by all means, yeah.
Because I think what comes to mind is I remember doing the background stuff on De'Aaron King for the draft guide. And the reason he went to Houston originally is because it was the only team that would offer him at quarterback. It was the only team. Every other team wanted to play him at slot receiver or a different position. And then obviously he's played at Miami and Houston since and hasn't looked great. Like I wouldn't forecast him as even a day 2 pick after this upcoming season. I don't know. I think it's something to consider when you are like as athletic and as freaky as he is and don't have the size, right? How tall is he? 5'9", 5'10"?
Yeah.
He's a little bit of a shorter guy. So it's interesting. I do think, though, this is how I wanted to answer the question. Screw thinking about, the NFL draft and how it's going to affect your future in that regard. Going back to Miami and playing football again for De'Aaron King, who maybe doesn't have a long tenure in the NFL ahead of him, I think is smart in terms of like getting the best out of your athletic career and playing more football in your career. Yeah. I think he could go back to Miami and have some fun.
Being a starting quarterback at Miami is probably pretty fun.
Exactly. From a fun perspective, I think it was a great decision.
Yeah. And it's like, I feel like the Cardinals would love to have him over Chris Streveler, right?
I don't know how Streveler made it into the NFL. I've brought up that he had the worst touchdown to interception ratio in the Canadian Football League and was benched on their way to a Grey Cup and still is a backup in the NFL. That, I think, is surprising. He could be the backup for Cliff Kingsbury after this season. Who knows? Good backup to Kyler Murray. All right, next one comes from _drill_Clinton. Is this year's safety class as valued with the injuries and play we saw? And is Ardarius Washington still a first-round talent?
It was a down year. I had high hopes for a safety class, but then you had Javon Holland from Oregon opt out. You had Andre Sisco tear his ACL.
Paris Ford opt out.
Who?
Paris Ford.
Oh, yeah. Paris Ford opted out after 6 games. Opted. AKA quit. And then Ardarius Washington, you saw some of the issues of his size pop up more on tape, and you kind of got a little bit more hesitant that he's a slam dunk, because I thought he was heading into the season with some more missed tackles, speed concerns. I still love him. First round talent, he's not going to go in the first round. No one's going to. you draft a 5'9", 180-pound safety in the first round, and he doesn't turn out, you get laughed at. Like, that's why Budda Baker didn't go in the first round. It's like you draft traits in the first round because if they don't work, like,
again, that's what scares me about the Devontae Smith conversation. Again, like that, like draft a receiver that's 170 pounds, 6'1", 175, 180, and he doesn't pan out like that at number 3 overall in Todd McShay's mock draft. I always called it the Mick draft. Todd McShay's mock draft. That I think scares me. Again, it still scares me a little bit, similar to the safety position. And don't make the comparisons to Carl Joseph. Carl Joseph was like, what, 5'10", 210, 215?
Oh, yeah, he was a horse.
He was a hoss.
Small safety. And like Bob Sanders, too, was short, not small. Rodarius Washington, both short and small. Like, he's similar to me, like, the comp of the draft guy is going to be Tyrann Mathieu because of the instincts that he plays with. But, like, his floor at the NFL level, I love him. I still think I would draft him probably towards the end of the first round if I really needed a safety, because I think that's the type of player you're getting. Because at, like, worst, I think you're getting like a Mike Hilton, who is very similarly sized and a very good slot receiver. Because of that, and like Hilton at Ole Miss had a lot of the similar sort of instinctual plays on his tape. So I do think Rodarius Washington not going to go in the first round. Someone's getting hell of a player on day 2, though, I think.
We also didn't see a ton of the Florida State kid, Hamza Nasruddin.
Yeah.
Who projects right now on
had an
PFF draft
ACL,
board.
came back, and you barely saw him. So high hopes for the safety class, but kind of just none of their 2020s went great, besides maybe Trayvon Moehrig. He's going to be safety 1, I think, because of that.
All right, let's jump to the next question here. This one this is also from Drill Clinton, _Drill_Clinton.
Here we go.
Who is your favorite #fun to watch player at every position? I love this. #fun to watch is fantastic.
The best.
And this is a great question. For those who don't know, maybe new listeners to 2-for-1 drafts, we hate on those draft evaluators or people who follow the draft that say nothing but this guy's fun to watch, because it isn't a take. It's very soft, and
football
is fun to watch. Yes, exactly. But who is your favorite fun to watch player at every position? I'll add some pieces here as well.
Quarterback. If you guys listened all year, you know. I would just
King.
put him on. Okay. I would just put him on my players to watch for the weekend just because he was playing. It's Trevor Lawrence, Clemson. Just because the way he plays football it's just electric. Running back, Javonte Williams, North Carolina. I waffle between him and Travis Etienne, but Javonte Williams, just like guys bounce off of him left and right at the college level. It's not going to happen as much at the NFL level, but I just think the level of tackle breaking ability that he has, how kind of prototypical NFL size explosiveness numbers he's going to have at the combine. Like I feel pretty good about Javonte Williams as a running back prospect. Wide receiver, this one was the toughest one. These are the guys that always get the fun to watch label, and there's 2 that are extremely fun to watch. Florida's Kadarius Toney, Purdue's Rondale Moore. I want Kadarius Toney because he has some broken tackles on his tape that I've never seen people do before in terms of how he broke the tackles. Kind of like there are certain guys that just move away that no one else can. To me, that's Kadarius Toney. The play against, I think it was LSU, where he starts going into a spin move to break a tackle. It was on a running play. They handed it off to him. He's breaking one tackle and starts a spin move to break a second tackle while he's not even done breaking the first tackle. It was, I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like that. So Kadarius Toney, the most fun to watch wide receiver. His teammates, the most fun to watch tight end, Kyle Pitts. That one was the easiest one in this entire list. There's not another tight end in the country that comes close to him. Offensive tackle, Minnesota's Daniel Faalele. 6'9", 400 pounds. Like, watching him walk is fun. The guy is He's a different specimen altogether. Interior offensive line, I went Landon Dickerson from Alabama.
Dickerson, 69.
Dickerson, 69. Not going to win any athleticism contest. His combine might suck nuts, but he had 14 big-time blocks this year.
He's a mean person.
Is mean, yes. And you love...
in a good way.
Love guys like that. Defensive tackle, Tyler Shelvin, LSU. We didn't get to fun to watch him this year. But 1, it's not like an exciting defensive tackle class. And 2, just again,
this guy's
the same reason for Daniel Faalele. Watching a 350-pound guy just bench press centers is kind of fun. Like at the end of the day, when the guys just don't move him ever, is fun.
The dude's a 2-gapping machine. He is just immovable force in the middle.
Oh yeah, just if he can get his weight under control, like he's about as sure.
Yeah, I did the background on him for the draft guide too, and it talks about how when he was being recruited, so much of it was like, dude, you got to keep your weight down. Like, we have to find ways to get you underweight.
His mom had to keep him on a diet.
His mom had to put him on a diet. Like, and I'm not making fun. Again, it sounds more condescending than I want it to be. Regardless.
You're fat shaming him. It's cool.
I'm not trying to fat shame anybody.
You're an asshole.
What I'm saying is it was a legitimate thing in his recruiting process and in his early years at LSU. It's like, if this guy gets his weight down, he's a freaking world beater. Yeah. But he struggles with it and had to like give up a lot of foods and all this different stuff. It's going to be a similar situation in the NFL. If this guy can get his weight down and be at a playable weight, like he's a different player.
He's got that Terrence Knighton capability.
Ooh.
Terrence Knighton towards the end of his career.
What was his nickname? What was his nickname like? Oh. It was like pot. Oh, it was like
pot roast.
Pot roast. Yeah. I like that. God. That's great.
I wonder, Tyler Shelvin's got to come up with cool nicknames.
I missed the when Justin Ellis, the former Louisiana Tech defensive tackle that was drafted by the Raiders, was with Dan Williams, who was a free agent signing for the Raiders from the Arizona Cardinals. They were meat and potatoes back in the day.
Ooh.
That was a great nickname combination there. I really like that. I like bigger defensive tackles having food nicknames.
You know what we should do? We should open up the mail. Well, it wouldn't really be like a question mailbag next week, but whoever can come up with the best nickname for Tyler Shelvin.
Tyler Shelvin, if he goes to
give him something.
Cincinnati, it's the 5-way.
The 5-way. That's fantastic. I hope he goes to Cincinnati now.
All right. Linebacker. Or no, edge. I missed edge. Edge, Wyatt Hubert, Kansas State, because I'm very curious to see what this guy's arm length is at the combine, because he's like 6'3", 6'4". He looks like ideal size, but then he probably is going to check in with like 31-inch arms.
Oh no!
Like this guy he's this year's T-Rex, but he kind of like flails them, and he gets the job done. It looks almost like borderline comical, but like he's a legitimate prospect in his own right. And not to hate on Wyatt Hubert, like I think he's actually good, but man, he did not get blessed with long arms for his size. Linebacker.
I thought you were going to say the Duke kid there. He's another guy that's fun to watch. Yeah, Chris
He is fun, but went Wyatt Hubert with this one. Linebacker, Chaz Surratt, North Carolina, the roller coaster, the best blitzing off-ball linebacker. I mean, he comes downhill like he wants a concussion. Like he's like attempting to rock himself. That's how he does it. Like that's not... Flip on the tape, boss. Tell me if I'm wrong. All right. Cornerback position here. Asante Samuel Jr., Florida State. Just because like you see him and you're like, oh shit, like, yeah, that's Asante Samuel Jr. Senior's kid.
He also tackles
quickness.
He's very physical for his size.
Yeah.
I think he tackles really, really well, and he's not afraid of contact. And when you see that for a guy that probably projects as a slot receiver at the next level at his size, I agree that he's fun to watch.
Yeah. And then safety, Andre Cisco.
The roller coaster. The true roller coaster.
The most up and down safety prospect I've ever seen. In terms of,
I thought that was going to be Paris Ford, but he was a little bit more down than up this year.
Yeah. Cisco just has never seen a double move that he thought was a single move.
Incredible. That was a great answer. Very thoughtful for _drill_Clinton. Let's move now to @TheMarkFull. Chiefs are a sneaky bad roster with needs almost everywhere. Entire offensive line, edge, linebacker, corner, wide receiver with Watkins leaving, and even safety. Mm-hmm. In this class, what would be the best value at the end of round one?
I think bang for your buck, deep edge class with a lot of athletes, kind of unproven, and they're going to all be kind of off the board by like mid round two, I would guess. That's just kind of how edge talent works. The athletes go early. So I think edge would be a great place to address end of round one. And then wide receiver, like we've been banging the table, another fantastic loaded wide receiver class. You can get like an immediate impact starter. That's where you can find a guy who will chase, if you're talking about next year, 2021, who can give you the most value. Wide receiver would be where I would say can. But and then like the kind of positions after that where I think will be strong is safety. You kind of just touched on. There will be talent there at the end of round one. That's kind of where it'll start coming off the board. And as well as kind of interior offensive line. If that's where you're looking, you could probably get a quality guy there as well.
Yeah, I think I've seen some mocks with Elijah Vera Tucker going at the back end of the first round. I think that makes a ton of sense. Yeah. I think for receiver, I mean, getting Amon-Ra St. Brown, Chris Olave, Kadarius Toney, any of those guys that could fall that far would be awesome. And then an edge defender, I mean, Kwity Paye fell pretty far in Todd McShay's draft. If Kwity Paye falls to that level in the NFL draft, then it's an obvious pick. But then also you have Jason Owe, the Penn State edge defender, Azeez Ojulari, maybe at the back end of the first round, depending on how he tests. He's been really, really productive this year. There's a lot of guys. Brenton Cox Jr., too, the Florida edge defender.
I bet he doesn't declare. because of his...
Unfortunate, because he's had some of the most hashtag fun to watch tape at Edge this year.
Yeah.
Like, he's actually been putting people in a blender. He has two of the best spin move wins I've seen this year.
Mm-hmm.
And spin move is good. We've talked about this before. Spin move is a good indication of like, oh, buddy, this guy has the juice.
Mm-hmm.
The juice to get loose. All right. Moving forward here, we have at Fredericks JK. Thoughts on Desmond Ridder? Any chance he sneaks into the late first or early second round? I'll start.
Yeah, I'll let you take this one.
Desmond Ridder is I think a really, really good quarterback prospect. I don't know if the NFL is going to see him as Jordan Palmer had compared him to, in terms of there's a lot of similarities between Desmond Ridder and Jordan Love. I don't think Ridder has the same arm talent that Jordan Love had. I think it's good, but it's not that caliber. And I don't think it's a similar caliber to some of the best quarterbacks in this class.
Yeah, Love could sling it 75 yards.
Yeah.
Like he had...
Though Ridder has some really, really impressive big-time throws on tape, even dating back to his first year as a starter at Cincinnati. But this guy had a hot seat for a reason. He still needs to work on his decision-making. I think his rushing floor is there. His athleticism is there. I know he's a good leader in that locker room. But I don't think from a tools perspective, if you're going to swing the bat on a group of 5 quarterback that has had up and down games, like he hasn't absolutely lit the American Conference on fire like other small school quarterbacks have done for their respective programs. I think there are too many concerns with his production and too many concerns with his tools to really feel like he's going to be this back end of the first round player.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And I also think his rushing ability will play a little better in college than it does in the NFL in terms of how he's built. Like, he's a skinny dude.
Yeah, he's skinny.
He's not, this isn't Trey Lance or Justin Fields where I feel confident about them actually still breaking tackles once you get to the NFL. Like that, they're well built. They're built like, NFL tight ends. Desmond Ridder is built like a skinny wide receiver. I don't think that he's fast, but I don't think he's necessarily going to be a dynamic sort of add on to your running game like some other guys in the NFL.
From MMDDS89 on Twitter, what realistically should happen for the Jaguars to take Lawrence at 1?
Not take Lawrence.
And it's not absurd. Not take Lawrence at 1. And it can't be absurdly stupid, which is unfortunate because I wanted to answer with an absurdly stupid answer. But if it can't be absurdly stupid, I'm interested to hear your thoughts.
Well, the next question here too, that was from YouTube, is you want to read that one?
I can read the next one as well. What do you think about the Jags? This is from YouTube, from Matt on YouTube. What do you think about the Jags swapping the first overall pick for Deshaun Watson? Texans need cap relief and draft picks. Furthermore, they're wasting Watson's best years. Plus, he's too good to tank. My Jags would get a guaranteed thing with wide receivers and offensive line in their prime to match 12 picks, $80 million in cap space. Similar. That's a scenario that's not absurdly stupid. That could lead to Trevor Lawrence the Jags not taking Trevor Lawrence number 1 overall.
It is absurdly stupid, Austin. I'm sorry.
Because
the biggest thing is that when you trade a guy, their signing bonus, future signing bonus, the prorated signing bonus all comes due that year. So if you traded Deshaun Watson, the Texans would take on $51 million in additional cap hit this year.
That's a lot.
They can't do that unless they want to gut their entire roster and start over, which
would be absolutely absurd. Maybe it is stupidly absurd.
Yeah. And so that's why, and with the Trevor Lawrence thing, to go back to what's a realistic scenario, you can really only get other draft picks for Trevor Lawrence because the biggest thing about getting a young quarterback like a Trevor Lawrence and the biggest value of it is you get him on a rookie deal, the cross control for the first 4 years. You have 4-year window there that you can just spend recklessly kind of in free agency and build a Super Bowl winner around them. That doesn't, so the only other guys you would want to trade a Trevor Lawrence for would be Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, someone like that. But if you trade Joe Burrow right now, $20 million additional cap hit for the Cincinnati Bengals. That prorated signing bonus again for guys like Herbert, Burrow, Kyler Murray, all comes due, and it's not really feasible from a cap situation for those other teams to trade. So
what about Dak Prescott?
Dak Prescott, but again, from the Jaguars' perspective, they would need a lot more than just Dak Prescott.
100%.
So that there are some he would be in scenarios, and that's what we said, if Trevor Lawrence had that take a while back. If Trevor Lawrence wants to force a trade, Cowboys are one of the few teams that could actually make it work. I don't think there's a realistic scenario if you are the Jaguars at this point that isn't absolutely absurd to trade out And because like but it would be to the Jets or it would be to the Dolphins to then draft a quarterback in this class. It would be the only scenario it could be. But just from a Jaguars perspective, you can't do that to a fan base in terms of every single year you're comparing Trevor Lawrence to the guy now that you have. And if Trevor Lawrence turns out to be good, you're the GM that passed on Trevor Lawrence. So
I think it's too big of a risk by the GM.
It would be like an entire decision. The Jets would have to give you your entire draft for that number one overall pick. It's like when I'd start to think about it as a Jaguars GM.
All right, so that's the next two questions. Let's jump now to @GreekFreak35. How did Tua in 10 to 15? How did Tua, I think, do in the 10 to 15 intermediate range, and what can he do to improve in that area?
It wasn't great. He had a 53.6 grade on throws. I did 10 to 19 yards downfield, not 10 to 15, because 10 to 15 is a little small of a sample size there.
Fair.
But some of that is him just being young and still like not seeing underneath defenders the way he needs to at the NFL level. I think he had something like 6 turnover worthy plays on those throws, and pretty much all of them were losing an underneath defender with his eyes and just throwing it like through hands of a linebacker or something like that. A lot of it also is the offense it was in, and that's why Jan Gailey got fired.
He didn't fire, he resigned.
Oh, sorry.
It might have been a mutually parted ways type of thing.
It was not a modern NFL offense. There was a lot of ISO concepts. I was back and watched the tape of all those intermediate throws, and it kind of reminded me of Aaron Rodgers when he was with the Packers, Mike McCarthy, and they're just relying on guys to win one-on-one on a lot of routes at that area of the field. Dolphins don't really have those. Like, that's why Todd McShay has me drafting Devontae Smith number 1 overall. Devontae Parker, for as good as he is not a pure separator. He is a guy who is going to win at the catch point more often than not, and that's where he wins. And on big plays,
win at a contested catch point.
So it is a lot of vertical, a lot of ISO, and they didn't have necessarily the personnel to be doing that. So I think that contributed to his struggles as well. If it doesn't,
very opposite to what he was running at Alabama too.
Yes, that as well. So if it doesn't turn around next year, feel free to be worried. To me, after having gone back and watched those, I'm not super duper.
That's concerned. Good. Some hope for Dolphins fans. All right, this is from @PB.
But I guess it depends on who they hire as OC, because
that's an interesting gig.
Yeah. They fired back-to-back OC, resigned. But 2 years, 3 years now, they'll have 3 different OCs. 4 years and 4 different OCs. It's kind of a concerning trend.
@PBEK21, Pat Beck. Is this extra year of eligibility changing any draft prep this year?
Yeah, it's annoying as hell.
It sucks. We're trying to build the draft guide right now. We want it to be 200 players, and the draft guide will come out on January 25th. And we want it to be 200 players. But with this, the deadline to declare for the draft is what, January 18th?
Yes.
It's going to make things that much more difficult to fit in more of those guys before the 25th deadline we have to get it on the site.
Yeah, because you can have a guy who's started for 4 years of college, been extremely productive, and just say, I'm going to come back to school.
We didn't bring this up, but Desmond Ridder could come back to school.
Yeah. Like, a lot of these guys could come back to school. And so to prep a 200-guy draft guide, you'd have to do like 240. And that's just, so we're going to
probably fall closer to 150.
150 early, and then do a quick update in like a month or so.
Yeah,
after combine.
I think that makes sense. The NFL Draft Guide, by the way, you can get in your Edge or Elite annual subscription or monthly subscription. It is the best draft guide, biased take, but it is the best draft guide. It's going to have data and visualizations. We have route maps going in this year's draft guide for quarterbacks and wide receivers and tight ends, I think. It's going to be pretty nuts.
But I will also answer this from the perspective. I was talking to a guy, a director of player personnel for a team the other day, and he was saying I actually get a lot more work done because I'm at home all the time.
Oh, fair.
And like, I'm not on the road. Like, it's not wasting a lot of my time. I've watched more of these guys than ever before. So
interesting.
From a team perspective,
will they continue to send scouts to watch games live after the season? Has COVID found that error in the system? It'll be interesting. All right. From Nico_D'Amato_, what position/players do you think the Packers are looking for at the back end of the first round? Guys like Barmore, Bolton, Darian Kendrick, Trayvon Moreg all seem to have potential to make a huge difference.
Well, they're definitely not targeting wide receiver. We know that. I think we can safely say that. But no, I think they could, if they want to kind of replace Marquez Valdez Scantling's role in that offense, because he can't seem to, because he's like 50-50 when he gets 20 yards down the field in terms of if he's going to catch or not.
Drops are largely noisy. We brought that up before. They're volatile year over year, but Marquez Valdes-Scantling has really struggled dropping balls when open deep down the football field, winning these valuable routes and still coming up short. That has been a concern for MVS for sure.
Kind of like the way he attacks the ball. He's not attacking it right. Like he doesn't catch a deep pass outside of his frame. That ball is hitting him in the stomach every time. That's why.
And we've talked about that before too, which I think is an important conversation. Well. Is with drops, people bring up in the scouting process like focus drops versus like ball skills drops. Like focus drops are you attack the ball well, you approach the ball well, but just like lost focus and didn't catch the ball, didn't see it through. The ball skills concerns are the ones that we've brought up with Noah Fant in the past, bringing up now with Marquez Valdes-Scantling. It's where you're not attacking the ball correctly, and those are leading to drops. That is more concerning, and we haven't run the analysis and PFF's charting of focus drops versus bad ball skills drops, but I bet you bad ball skills drops, this is an assumption, are a bit more stable than just the other drops we've seen.
Bad ball skills drops also show up in other ways.
We need a better name for those.
That don't end up getting called drops. You know, like you're downfield and you're one-on-one, like you guys on your hip, and like you just don't get to the ball because you weren't tracking it well enough.
That's also
it doesn't get called a drop, but it's like if that was, you know, Odell Beckham has struggled with drops the past years, but Odell Beckham's going to attack that ball correctly. Like he's going to get that ball at the time.
He gets his hands on more balls, is what you're saying.
Exactly. So
that's going to lead to more drops.
If they're looking to fill that role, I think Kadarius Toney, Rondale Moore at the end of round one, who I would go with. I think they're game breakers, and there's certainly a role for them in Matt LaFleur's offense this year with what they've run, like their jet sweeps and a lot of the wide screens that they do. So I think those guys, if they're going for a more traditional true number 2 wide receiver, Chris Olave, Rashad Bateman, I think would also be guys that they would be high on. Defensively, they kind of have a type along the defensive line. They like big athletes. Like they like big, explosive dudes. To me, not a lot of defensive tackles fit that. Christian Barmore would be my favorite in that mix. I think Davion Nixon also has that physical tool set. I think that's still a little early for him. A guy like Levi Onwuzurike does too. Also a little early for him. So end of round one, I probably wouldn't put those guys in the mix. Edge class, Carlos Basham, Wake Forest fits that profile of what they like. I think they could be involved in this edge class because they might be moving on from Preston Smith and his contract, and they use 3 edges there. I mean, Rashawn Gary is their third guy and has played over 600 snaps this year. It's pretty much a starter in that defense, so they might be looking to replace him. And again, they know better than a lot of teams, which they've drafted a ton of edge over the years, that edge talent does not last long. So Carlos Basham, I also put maybe Jalen Phillips from Miami into that mix, although injury is going to be a concern with him. Linebacker, Nick Bolton. I don't know if they'll be in the linebacker sort of market, but I do think he's a good fit for what they do. And just like an every down, steady, between the tackles guy that will get you, like is a leader and will get you in the right defense. They need that in the middle of their defense. But I'm not sure with kind of the emergence of Chris Barnes and the Minnesota linebacker, whose name's now escaping me, I think they might not be looking at the linebacker position. Cornerback, I'll say J.C. Horn from South Carolina would fit, I think, what they look for. Now, they have like more man corners, but they've played zone this year a lot more than any other years. I think J.C. Horn's a man corner similar to, like a similar kind of type of corner to a Jair Alexander. I was going to say skill set, but they're not really similar skill set, but like types of corners in the way they play. And then safety, Trayvon Moehrig is like the guy I could see there in terms of they would need kind of that dime safety as a guy. They would need a guy who plays in the box. Like that's what they, I think, would be looking for if you are the Packers. And that also would be Hamza Nasruddin, but probably not first round for Hamza, probably more second. There's my breakdown.
I like it.
One of those guys.
Damn. At the back end of the first round, I feel like we talk about this every year in draft classes where you can find a ton of value at different positions. You're not like pigeonholed into taking some of these guys. I think of those that you've mentioned, I think J.C. Horn, adding cornerback there, and how he's played at outside corner for South Carolina before opting out, I think was impressive. Or Nick Bolton. I mean, from a fun to watch perspective, Bolton to Green Bay would be sick.
I think my favorite of those, as a Packers fan myself, obviously wide receiver would be my favorite of them, but I don't think any other position offensively is really going to do you much good. Like they're pretty kind of set at a lot of other positions. Nick Bolton would be my favorite pick if you could get any of those guys.
You could start to draft. I mean, what about offensive tackle at the back end of the first round?
Elkton's going to be the tackle of the future.
Tackle the future.
Better.
All right. Well, that will do it for the mailbag episode of 2-for-1 Drafts. Also touched on Todd McShay's mock draft, obviously. But if you want to be on this podcast, if you want your name read and your question read on this podcast, make sure you rate and review the podcast and leave your question there. We'll answer it next week if you leave a question in the reviews on your podcast. You can also ask questions in the YouTube comments. Harder to pick them all up, but we'll try and find them. We'll try and bring them in. And then also, Mike, you'll be sending a tweet. We'll also get some from some of the main accounts about the mailbag episode and try and get questions asked there. Until next time, Austin Gale, Mike Renner, 2-for-1 Drafts.